Hey friends, the views of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Let's Talk Menopause. Let's Talk Menopause does not provide medical advice. The content in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions that you may have. Welcome to Hello Menopause. I'm your host, Stacey London. Hello Menopause is changing the conversation around menopause. In every episode, we explore the physical, emotional, and mental changes that women experience during this transformative stage in life. This season, we're so thankful to our sponsor, Versally. The options for menopause care can be overwhelming, which is why they've done the research to help you navigate all of them. Versally is a one-stop shop for expert advice, curated products, and access to virtual care. It's where menopause makes sense. Visit Versally.com to learn more. Dr. Vonda Wright is a double board-certified orthopedic surgeon, researcher, and author who specializes in optimizing aging, particularly for women in midlife and beyond. Her work focuses on how strength, mobility, and lifestyle choices can dramatically impact how we age, and she's been a vocal advocate for shifting the conversation around menopause from one of decline to one of empowerment. She has written 6 books on the topic of aging and longevity, and she has a podcast called Hot for Your Health, where she interviews women who are experts in health and fitness. We're so excited to talk to her about how to stay strong, both physically and mentally, through all the stages of menopause. Please welcome Dr. Vonda Wright to Hello Menopause. Dr. Wright, I am so excited that you are here for so many reasons. I mean, one, we've been trying to get you on the podcast, I think, for the last 2 years. All of your friends have been on it. It is a wonderful, wonderful chance to meet you and to talk to you so much about things that are not just important to women's health, but certainly midlife and beyond.
Well, Stacey, I'm certainly thrilled to be here. I think you need to give me some dressing advice, but we'll do that on another time, right?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I don't know if anybody can see, but the black pearls and the red glasses really work for me.
Good. I'm happy you approve.
Exactly. And you're seeing me in my gym clothes because that's like, I can only fit things in as quickly as possible. And speaking of which, you know, I talk a lot about the fact that I stopped going to the gym for what I call, you know, sort of more vanity reasons. When I was younger, it was like, oh, I ate too much this week, or I had too much birthday cake or whatever. And it was this guilt, like, go run on the treadmill, punish yourself, do whatever it takes to, you know, lose the weight or keep the calories off. And you know, after menopause, obviously bone strength was of such concern to me after really understanding what hormones can do. And I'd love for you to break that down for us, because I think that people don't really understand the difference from going to the gym, you know, because you want to look good in a dress, or going to the gym because you want to walk and be strong when you're 85. There's a perception shift, a lens shift that made going to the gym, you know, where I used to blow it off all the time. Now I feel this real responsibility to my health to go. Can you talk to us a little bit about how, the need for strength training, or the need to really care about our bones matters so much at this time?
Well, you know what? That as the primary motivator, meaning feeling amazing today, being able to do what you want, when you want it, for the rest of your life. Those are huge motivators. But I'm going to tell you a secret. You can have both. Because do you know what muscle is, Stacey? It is nature's Spanx.
That is literally the best definition I've ever heard of a muscle in my life.
So listen, that should not be our primary motivator. I always say, listen, ladies, it is not about your little black dress, but it's icing, it's bonus. Because why should we really go there is exactly what you said. With the natural course of the way our body works, I mean, we live in phases, right? We think about we're ramping up as a child to go through adolescence, puberty, when we get our hormones. And then we live in them and we work in them. And then our body just naturally, not abnormally, it is the most natural thing every day to live, and living is aging. But there are changes. So with that, we cannot do what we've always done. I mean, we just can't. And so, because sometimes what we've always done is not the best, right? I'm with everybody who grew up wanting to be this big, mad that I had muscly thighs and I couldn't fit into all the things. But, now if we pivot our perspective from what are my muscly thighs going to get me? They're going to keep me out of the friggin' nursing home is what they're going to do, right? It gives a different perspective. The other perspective of going every day to the gym is not only feel amazing today, but if we can somehow stop on the way out of the gym and realize, okay, we're tired, but we feel kind of like a badass because we just lifted metal off the floor and all the things we did, that gives us pleasure today. And so I would want, Stacy, people to associate taking care of ourselves as pleasure.
Oh, that's a really big perspective shift, right? I mean, women in general, I think, don't feel they deserve pleasure or that their pleasure has been overlooked, culturally, societally, and that's like a radical statement, really, is to say, think about what I was going to ask you next is that, do you think that there's a real mind-body connection in like actually going to do the thing that you're saying, lift the metal, get yourself to the gym, feel like a badass afterwards? All of those things in repetition it's a little bit like getting a makeover, right? Because when we start, with a client, they may not be happy with the way that they're dressing. And by the end, they are, oh my God, like I look amazing. If I can do this, I could leave a bad marriage. I could get a better job. I could have a better relationship with my partner or my kids or whatever. There's something to the idea of physical accomplishment that I think really boosts our confidence psychologically.
Well, and I'm glad you said it like that, physical confidence and not just physical looks, right? That was purposeful. But listen, there is a biochemical reason. Now listen, sometimes we associate walking out of the gym with, oh, I'm a badass. I feel good. I have some endorphins. But the mere contraction of skeletal muscle causes, the word is transcription, the making of a protein called galanin that travels from our muscle to our brains and works in a center in our brains called the nucleus ceruleus, all these Latin words. But basically, it builds your resilience. It is a resilience factor. So this mind-body connection you're talking about is not just about mood and like, yes, it is literally building a better brain.
Yes. Oh, and resilience is a great word for it too. Because I do think it is that connection of like just lifting the weights that makes you feel like you can attack your day. And I've never met anybody who has ever said to me, I really regretted going to the gym. Like nobody ever regrets it. You regret not going. You regret sleeping in, even though it feels good at the time, right? I always say, don't trade what you want most for what you want now.
Oh, that's great advice. Great advice.
I feel like that's what it's become for me I'm postmenopausal. I know how important bone health is. And I'll be honest, I'm so excited to talk to you because I just got a DEXA scan. I knew I had osteopenia, but I have osteoporosis in 2 vertebrae. And I am like, I knew there was the possibility I had it in 1, but 2. And one of them is holding my titanium plates and rods together for a fusion. What do I do? And I think this is very personal, but I guess it's also for people who don't realize they have low bone density or don't realize they're even in osteoporosis, which if I understand correctly, osteopenia, you can reverse, osteoporosis, you cannot.
Well, let's reverse a little more, for I am so surprised. Even all my patients are smart, savvy, if they're women, smart, savvy women. And yet so many people, this is not a part of their common vocabulary. So, yeah. So what osteopenia and osteoporosis mean, it's a measure of the density or the amount of mineral in your bone. So we actually build bone across our youth until about 30. And that is very influenced by what we eat, our activity level, our genetics, our illnesses. So I have to tell you the truth, Stacy. In my orthopedic clinic where we are today, I get DEXA scans on everybody, and I have 24-year-olds who have osteopenia and osteoporosis. And so it's not just something that happens postmenopausal. It's for all our younger sisters and our daughters even. So, but what happens as we approach 40? I call 35 to 45 a critical decade because that's when most women, we have few enough eggs in our ovaries that our hormones start to decline, whether we feel it or not. And then by about 45 on average is the age of perimenopause, when we start manifesting all the things that your guests have been talking about. The silent part of that are your bones. You don't hear your bones. Listen, in your world, probably the only time you ever thought about bones was looking at someone's gorgeous cheekbones, or how something fit on this wrist bone so delicate, right? But bones are, what are they? Well, they're structural. They hold us up because without bones, honestly, muscle is just a heaping pile of metabolic tissue. It doesn't go anywhere. It just, right? It gives us our stature. It gives us our posture. So that's what we know of it. It also is the home of all of our immune cells. It makes our blood cells. It houses the minerals. It is a metabolic communicator, meaning bone produces hormones itself. I mean, I know it's so many things.
I thought, I'll be honest with you, I thought bones were like wood, I knew they were structural, but I didn't know anything about literally anything you just said about bone and what it does and what it can produce. And so when you see younger people with osteopenia or osteoporosis, and that can be for any number of reasons, right? Nutrition, genetics. I do know, my mom has osteoporosis, and I also have a degenerative psoriatic arthritis in my spine and my hips. So I'm very curious. And you were talking about immune. I have autoimmune diseases, pretty severe autoimmune diseases. Is there a connection between autoimmune and bone? Because that, to me, I've never heard anybody talk about that.
The data on that is emerging, but what we know is chronic inflammatory states. Bone is very responsive to inflammation, whether it's chronic due to autoimmune or whether we impose it on ourselves by our diets and our stress and our life. Bones are very sensitive to that, because here's another thing that may shock your listeners is that we don't get one set of bones for a lifetime. We replace our bones every 10 years. They're dynamically building and exchanging our whole life. So we don't get to pay attention once. We have to pay attention our whole lives. And I'm so glad you went and got your DEXA scan. Now, for anyone listening whose mother is shrinking, if you shrink, if you have autoimmune, if you've had something like asthma where you've had to been on steroids your whole life, if you smoked at any point, right? If your habits include more than a couple glasses of wine a night, if you, for whatever reason, never bashed your bones, you were never an exerciser, those are all risk factors for bone density and trouble. And we measure that by a DEXA scan. So you lay there, right? You just had it. You just kind of lay there like
I was like, this is the easiest.
It was painless.
I can't get an answer wrong. I just have to lie here.
And it gives you a bunch of numbers, right? So the way we interpret those numbers are on one of those terrible bell curves, just like in college, where the top of the bell curve is 0. That is the bone density of a healthy 30-year-old, healthy, air quote, 30-year-old. Any positive number, great. Your bones are great. Any negative number to -1, or if for you number people out there, 1 standard deviation from the mean to -1 is the definition of osteopenia, which means your bones are becoming weak. When your number is minus 2.5 or below, or 2.5 standard deviations, math people, that is when it's defined of osteoporosis. But just because you have that number does not mean there's not anything you can do about it. And it certainly doesn't mean that you're going to break a bone, because there are many components to breaking a bone. Many people have to fall, right? So when we're approaching bone health, we do things, and I'm happy to talk about all of these things. Hormone replacement. I'll explain the role of estrogen in bones. We have to impact our bones. We can discuss the biomechanics. But we also have to not friggin' fall. Listen, Stacy, I fell. Are you in New York, or you're in New York frequently? One of my most memorable falls, and thankfully I didn't break, but I wrote about this in my book. It's so memorable. I was on that corner right down on the end of the park in front of
The plaza?
the plaza.
I got you.
You know it? So I'm standing there, all the beautiful people. I probably was not paying attention. I step off the curve and I trip, not for no reason. And this happens to anybody, right? And Stacy, I'm laying there in the intersection like a starfish. And time slows down. And my girlfriend is with me, and I don't even know what she's doing, but I'm trying to figure out whether I should get up or go chasing after my Dior lipstick that I had just bought. I mean, come on, I don't get that very often. So
Priorities.
it's a priority. But listen, falls can happen to anybody at any time. So I think everybody's workout, which I'm going to describe a bone workout for you, must include balance, which means as simple as standing on one leg, brushing your teeth. It doesn't have to be rocket science. You just need to be on one leg, moving around a little bit. Imagine it, moving around a little bit to retrain your balance, number one. Number two, we need to bash our bones. If we can, I like people to jump up and down with a jump rope, just in your office 20 times a day, because bones build when biomechanical forces, I'm pounding on my fist for those of you listening, biomechanical forces are then translated by the bone into biochemical messages that say, hey, she's using her bone. Let's build some better bone for her, right? So hormones, impact, nutrition is critical. Bones are high protein organs. They need a lot of protein. We can't starve these guys. But besides jumping, what kind of workout should we be focusing on? Well, muscle is all the rage these days, and we have to build some muscle. And I say obnoxious things like, okay, we need to put down the mamby-pamby pink weights that we've been told to lift 30 times and learn to progressively overload and lift heavier. And I'm saying it like that because when I come across as saying, you must lift heavy weights, I think it strikes fear in the hearts of people who have never done it before.
I agree. I mean, I am now trained in the art of the heavier weights, but I will tell you again, I'm the same generation as you. I think that we were brought up to feel like we were supposed to look like Kate Moss. Oh, came right in time to be completely traumatized by her. And I remember thinking, you don't lift weights because you don't want to get big. And I already had broad shoulders, and so my friends and I would always talk about it. It's like, no. Run 6 miles. Don't lift weights. You don't want to get big was always the thing.
Well, let's dispel that myth. The only women who get big from lifting is because they want to. And it can take decades because women build muscle, at a rate of 1 to 2 pounds a month if it's all you're doing, right? I mean, it took me when I recomposed my body around menopause, and I'm happy to tell you that story, but
oh my God, that we have to hear.
So it took me between 6 and 9 months to lose 12% body fat and gain 8 pounds of muscle. And I was doing all the things. So 8 pounds of muscle is never going to make me big. But what it did was make me lean
And strong.
and strong.
But may I ask how you do that? So you were saying it's a combination of strength training and nutrition. I'm assuming sleep hygiene is important here, but to lose 12% of body fat and gain 8 pounds of muscle, does that mean, so like what's really happening is that you traded fat for muscle?
I did, because I can't remember now. I've written it down in it's not at the top of my head, but I traded. And that's exactly how I talk about it. I recomposed my body. So here's the complete thing. And here's what I teach women now. And I call it living unbreakably, right? I don't want to be broken mentally, and I am not going to be broken physically. So I started really paying attention to what I was eating. Because listen, when doctors are residents, we eat what we can, when we can, including cold 3-day-old pizza and graham crackers in the surgical ones, because God knows when we're going to eat again, right? But that carried over into my adult career 25 years later, when I can eat just as well standing as I would sitting. In fact, so I had to really focus and realize that my body is not a garbage can. I have to put good things in. So focusing on high protein, I personally strive every day for 1 gram of protein per pound, ideal pound. So I started counting, and once you memorize that a half a cup of, or a cup of egg whites is 30 grams of protein, or a chicken breast the size of my hand is about 40 grams. It's not that hard, right? So focusing on our food was number 1 I did. Number 2, I learned to lift heavy. I knew how to lift, but I hired a strength conditioning coach whose job it was to teach me how to hinge, those lifting words, hinge and not jerk, and where my body should be under these weights I was going to put it under.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you for 1 second, because I think that's such an important point that I definitely want our audiences to hear. Even if you can lift strong, having a strength conditioning coach is going to give you form. And not everybody realizes that form is so important in order to activate the muscles that you're trying to activate, right?
Absolutely. And then once you learn form, I think that it's important to have mirrors in your environment. I know a lot, and I adore CrossFitters. Please, CrossFitters, don't send me hate mail, but there's no mirrors in the box. So when you're tired, you may not know that you're slipping out of form, and that's when you get injured. Now, that's what I do know, because they come to my office. So, but the other thing people write me on social media is, yeah, that's fine, but I really can't afford a trainer. And I completely understand that. But here's where I ask people to prioritize themselves, because do we really need a $7.18 cup of coffee every morning from the corner store? If I could save that for a few months and get firm instruction so that I don't hurt myself and that I get to do what I want when I want it, and then you can go back to that expensive fast food coffee.
Or if you're me, you could just stop going to vintage shows and buying clothes.
That's right. How many of those do we need? I don't know.
Oh my God, I am way fewer than I have. I will admit to that. But I do think that that's very important. I mean, again, when I think about health, right, and when I think about this kind of postmenopausal health for women and taking that responsibility on ourselves, there is a component here that is physical, obviously, but psychological, I think, is really important, and even financial. What are we willing to invest in ourselves now that we know we're in a much more precarious position than we were? So, for example, like, I don't, you haven't seen my DEXA scan, but I'm telling you, osteopenia, and I have these 2 vertebrae that have osteoporosis, which scared me because one of them has titanium and I don't want it to like mush to dust, right? So I'm taking all of the supplements that I can take, but should I be doing impact? Like, if you have osteoporosis in your spine or anywhere in your body, does impact matter in the same way, or is it more dangerous?
Well, I think it still matters, but you can do it in different ways. For instance, NASA uses mini trampoline rebounders to impact their astronauts when they return from space. So it doesn't provide the same pounding, but for my ladies that have osteoporosis in their spine or frank compression fractures, which means their vertebrae, which are normally like this, become like this. I am more careful with everything axial loading, which means even how slowly we progress with a squat bar. You still can, but we just need to be mindful.
I'll be honest with you, both my trainer, my strength trainer and my Pilates coach both said the same thing. They said, you don't stop because you have osteoporosis, but you adjust.
Right. And you know what? That's backed by science, Stacy. There's a marvelous study called the Lift More study, which really answered that question. How can we help women who have known osteoporosis continue lifting and lifting heavy? And so in the Lift More study, it was heavy lifting, 5 reps, 5 sets, and sometimes supervised. But those women got through that research protocol because they adjusted, they were careful. It just answered that question for the world. Can women with osteoporosis lift? So the answer would be yes. We just have to be mindful, right?
And my mom's generation, I don't even know what they knew about osteoporosis. I think about her at 83 and she has osteoporosis and really it got bad because she fell, right? And there are so many times where I've heard with much older people, the fall is the thing. The fall is sort of the beginning.
It is a fall, right?
Right. That's when it's going to be assisted living. That's when there's going to be mobility problems. So you said this before, but I think it's so important to reiterate because, as we age, just because we are, impaired in some way by having low bone density doesn't mean you give up and lie in bed, doing nothing.
That is the worst. In fact, bed rest is known in the surgical literature. 1 week in bed, you can lose up to 9% of your muscle mass. So that is not an answer, my friends. Movement is the answer. Stacy, think about the way we're designed. Our bodies are intelligently designed. Our biggest muscles are below our belly buttons. We are not designed to sit around. We would be in a much different shape if we were designed like that.
But what happens to us that love to be couch potatoes on the weekends?
Well, it's all the time commitment, right? So 7 hours on a couch, okay, maybe we should rethink that. But, we all deserve a little downtime and rest. I mean, it's just not a two-dimensional life, activity or no. It's all the things, right? So I may have been known to sit on a couch and just watch too many sports, but,
Oh my God, that's exciting too. I love that you're so into sports. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was this idea of pushing through that I think a lot of women in particular, when it comes to any kind of exercise, I just in general, we don't take it easy on ourselves. I have not met one ambitious woman who doesn't drive herself into the ground, work as hard as she can, try and work out as well as she can, eat as well as she can, care for others as well as she can. And, I think that menopause is this, I call it a reckoning to a renaissance, because I feel like all of these things come to a head, right? Our elder parents, maybe they're dying, or empty nest syndrome. 45 to 55 was proven to be the lowest point of happiness and in a woman's life, highest rate of depression, divorced, and decreased earning potential. And it really made me think, well, wow, menopause could be responsible for all of that. And we just don't know.
Oh, exactly. Oh, exactly, Stacy.
Exactly. So I'm like, all of this makes perfect sense to me. But you come to it, and the first thing that I hear women say, and this is obviously, when your hormones have really left the building, I don't feel like myself. I don't feel like myself. I don't know how to describe it. I don't feel like myself. I don't look like myself. And we are now, at least we have resources in order to understand the menopause journey to get us in a better place. But we are always taught to kind of push ourselves harder, always taught to try and run that extra mile, always taught to try and lift that extra 5 pounds. What about our bodies change? How do we have to listen to pain and fatigue when we are older? Because younger, you push through, you hurt yourself, you recover, it's fine. But, we don't have those same capabilities physiologically. So how do we manage recovery. How do we know when pain is the wrong pain? And really, how do we push through in terms of fatigue?
So that's a lot. So let's talk about pain first. I think it is surprising and disturbing, Stacy, how many women come to my clinic and, they usually come for a musculoskeletal problem, but because I'm a whole person doctor and I know that they're in perimenopause, whether they know it or not, we'll start talking about all the things you listed. But you know what they always say to me without prompting is that, I didn't want to come, but I didn't want to come because I have a really high pain tolerance, like a badge. I have a really high pain tolerance, but I just couldn't take it anymore. And I've grown accustomed to hearing about it, but it's never okay, right? Why do we know that? Why? It's because of all the things you just said. We're just going. And you know what? That's the way we're raised. If we don't do it, who's going to do it? I've often wanted a wife or whoever, a housekeeper, whatever. I just wanted that caretaker. And, my husband hears this. He's going to be like, yeah, because he's retired. He now does it. So thank you, him. But you know what I mean? Like, we are the caretakers. How do we recover? Well, number one, we recognize that we need to recover. Number two, Stacy, here's the crux of it. And I am not a psychologist, but I have taken care of 100,000 people in my career. Nothing matters until you decide that you are worth the daily investment in yourself. Because you can put everybody in front of you. You can put the dog walker in front of you. Oh my God, I forgot to pay the dog walker. I can't take a nap, right? Anything takes priority.
And then my dog just started to bark in agreement.
Sorry.
Don't forget about me. She does this all the time.
It's okay. It's adorable. But do you know what I mean? Until we decide we're worth it, because it becomes a matter of priority. And it's not to say that we don't shuffle around. Like, today I'm going to prioritize something else. Tomorrow I will take the time. But it's a complete attitude shift. There's two attitude shifts that I think are critical now, and why I can completely say, this is the most authentic I've ever been in my life. Like, when I was young, I would have never shown up in front of you with a ponytail, but this is how I am today, right? So I'm coming before you. But this is the most authentic time because of one mindset shift, which is years ago, I stopped looking over my shoulder and saying, oh my God, it was so wonderful to be young. It was wonderful to be young, but that does not mean my life is over. And the second mindset shift is that I am worth taking care of.
And that second mind shift is so interesting to me, because that mind shift, this is where I start to think, oh my God, confidence becomes so much more important. Confidence and, feeling your power, which is psychological. Like, confidence is almost a psychological practice. You have to tell yourself that you are worth it. And, you think about it, L'Oreal was kind of genius for that campaign.
You're worth it.
Right? I mean, even though I rail on the beauty industry for like its ridiculous standards and things like that, what an unbelievable way to remind ourselves. Like, I wish that it was your calling card. You're worth it about your body and your health rather than your hair color. But by the same token, I do think that it really does make a difference for women to experience that. And I think that is harder for most than they are willing to admit. Lots of women go around saying, like, I'm confident in my field, I know what I'm doing, this value. But actually feeling yourself to be of value is a little bit harder, right? I think just in general.
Well, and it's certainly the value, even for highly, societally successful women like you and I. It's not, this valuing ourselves enough to take care of ourselves is not something that just happens to people who don't work outside the home. It happens to competent business outside the home people. That probably didn't come off very well, but what I'm trying to say is that it touches all of us, no matter how we spend our time in life. So I think it's critical. And so it's something that I talk to my women in my clinic about all the time is you deserve to lift weights. You deserve to find 30 minutes a day to do something for your long-term future, whether it's walking, whether it's sprinting. I want to return to body composition in 2 minutes, but walking, sprinting, lifting, whether it's remembering to go pick up your magnesium and your progesterone so that you can sleep at night, whether it's, not scheduling meetings late because you have committed to the sleep hygiene of going to bed on time, getting up on time. All of those are the little stepwise decisions that take a knowledge that you're worth it.
Yes. And I wonder if there is something about just aging, right? That once we go through this kind of menopausal experience, we do come out the other side of it with a different set of values about ourselves. For a lot of younger women to say, I'm worth it, is either kind of posturing or still looking for external validation. But I think exactly what you're saying, that being able to say I'm worth it, to get up at like 7:30 in the morning, like I did, to go to the gym, which I was like, I'm lying in bed. I don't want to go. I want to snuggle my dog. I'm so much happier here. It's raining. It's cold. Every excuse until I was like, get out of bed and go do it. And I feel so much better, right, for having accomplished it. But I think it's also this kind of responsibility to self that you're talking about, where you're no longer willing to bend over backwards 24 hours a day, that you are scheduling time for your own well-being, whether that's, being in the gym or taking the walk or doing the thing that you used to think was sort of, extra. If you had time, you would get to it. If I could make a yoga class, I'd get to it. And that winds up, you're working out maybe once a month.
Well, it has to be a lifestyle, right? Not another brick, not another brick. It can't be another 6-week workout. It can't be another diet plan. It's just how I live, For instance, here's when I go out to eat with people and they know that I know I'm going to eat a lot of protein. I'm going to not eat the bread on the table. And they watch because they've heard me talk about it. They either are watching or they want to, or say, I'm so sorry. And I say to them, this is just how I eat. It's my lifestyle. It's not like a sacrifice. So it's a mindset shift. But you were talking about confidence. And we talked earlier about how sometimes we don't have the confidence to step into a gym where, we're throwing weights around, or into a new environment. And it may feel safer to do the thing we've always done. But I want women to look at this. It's another mindset thing. You wouldn't think the orthopod would be full of mindset, but I am. Listen, the confidence you're talking about to try new things, to work out in a different way, to the confidence to trust that I am worth it. I want us to realize that confidence is the memory of past successes. And so as midlife women, we've had a lifetime of successes. We have figured out how to do stuff, right? I didn't know how to do a lot of things, and I figured it out, whether I trial and error, whether I read, whether I ask my girlfriends. That is the same approach that I want women to think, I can figure this out. I have the confidence in my past successes that I'm going to figure out this weightlifting thing, this sprinting thing, which is the second way that I recompose my body. So to shift a body composition and trade fat for muscle, it takes sprinting. Now, that doesn't mean running on the track like Usain Bolt. It means high heart rate for brief periods of time. It takes high protein and it takes lifting heavy. Those are the three things that I used in my midlife recomposition, because I gained 30 pounds when I went through menopause. And, I'm only 5'4". I've always been, little, size 2, size 4. And as I had a decision to make. A, I wanted to feel like myself again. B, I was not going to go out and buy a whole separate closet. I was going to decide I was worth it, figure it out by hiring a trainer, by reading, becoming an expert in menopause and musculoskeletal. Well, I've always been a musculoskeletal health expert, but as it applies to menopause, right? Those are all figure-outable things.
Well, now they are, right? Because of doctors like you. This is the thing that I am so excited about, that I do really believe that Gen X's legacy is. I have never met a group of doctors around my age who have all come together to literally say, you have been in the dark. You don't know what's happening. We're leaving breadcrumbs along the path so you can follow and find the way. I don't think that way was always there, especially when, in the 70s and 80s, it was like you had a cup of cottage cheese and a glass of red wine, and that was somehow a diet. So I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, we do have the knowledge now that we didn't have before because of doctors like you and because of the research. And I think that, whereas I still hear people say to me, I can't believe you're talking about menopause. I don't know anything about menopause. I'm like, now I can point you here, 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 and here. Whereas before I was like, I don't know either. I thought you got it in your 70s or 80s, right? Had no understanding or concept. And also this idea of whether it's a life stage or medical issue, the way that you talked about it before. And so this is a perfectly natural process that we go through. So again, that takes a lot of the stigma out of it, whether we're calling it a stage of life where, oh, she's just being emotional or hysterical or whatever it is, whatever word we're using for women that day. Or this idea that aging means that something goes wrong, right? That you have to have your body sort of fall apart. But this idea of recomposing, I'm really big on this because one, it puts the control with you, right? It's personal control. And it's also a way to lean on past successes as proof of future. And it's a way to move into the stage of your life responsibly. So that we are not the same way I say to people, I don't want to wear what I wore when I was 25. I just don't. I don't want to exercise or eat or sleep the way I did at 25, which was never. And, all of those things. But what you're talking about is so important because you're saying, hey, at the stage of life where you feel least physiologically like yourself, where all this stuff that's external and cultural is coming at you, where you're taught to feel invisible, you're basically saying you can take all of that power back. You can gain weight during menopause and figure out how to recompose your body. You can tell yourself that you're worth it and do something that reflects that you believe that. Those things to me are extremely important for people to hear, not just the how and the why. Well, not just the how, but the why itself really is because you are worth it and you are worth keeping that kind of health throughout your life, even if the means to getting that health changes. I'm curious, what do you say to women who you see who are younger, who are experiencing some kind of musculoskeletal issues? Do you ever talk to them about here's what you're going to need to do now, and here's what you need to know for the future?
Oh, I'm about to have an orthopedic clinic with 30 people, and all the women are going to get this conversation. Because I'm not kidding, Stacy. Despite everything Generation Us, yes, Generation Us, there are still most of the women, unless they come to me specifically because they've heard me on a podcast like yours, know very little about it. So my poor millennial daughters right now have heard this. They're still having, they're still worried about all the young woman things. And I'm saying, you are never not going to know this. This is never going to be an issue for you. So what I tell my patients is, number one, you need to become literate. Here are the resources for literacy. And I name off 4 or 5. And I handwrite notes for my patients because I find that helps them develop. It just helps them know they're cared for and not just here's a handout, right? So I write down the resources that at a very minimum they must read. So that's number one, or the websites or the podcasts. So that's number one. Number two, I say you must make your hormone replacement decision. And my stand on that is that we are all sentient beings with the ability to have agency over our decisions. But you cannot make those decisions based on fear. You must make them on facts. And that takes some education. Whether you have to do it yourself or find somebody, clinician who actually knows about menopause. And then I write out the things that we've talked about, how to lift. Now, I don't go into hours and hours of it, but here are the basics: how to lift, jumping. I call it base training, walking, rapid walking. And and sprinting, and I give them an action plan because, Stacy, this is a time for action.
Yes. And that's actually the point of this podcast, is to go away with action items. I mean, just by telling me everything that you told me, I feel like you gave me 16 action items that I can go and do right now, which is so important, because I think that it's one thing for people to hear what you have to say, then they have to know what to do. Right? You can't just listen. You can't just stop at education. Now it's, how do you implement that education? So,
well, and this is where I see my place in the menopause universe, if you will, is that there are so many people, including yourself, doing a great job at raising awareness, providing education. And I've provided the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause to the conversation, right? That is my contribution. But my stance is, okay, now that you're literate, what are you going to do about it? Because there's one thing to swim around in the morass of, oh my God, this feels terrible.
And it's so much information and I feel overwhelmed and all the excuses.
Yes, take action. You're always going to feel bad unless you take some action. And that's really my stance is, okay, I'm the what's next. Here's how you eat. Here's how you move. Here's how you lift. All the things, because, you know, as a musculoskeletal doctor, people don't realize what a huge impact that will have on your life. I mean, heart disease is the number one killer of women. And we talk a lot about breast cancer, but 70% of all hip fractures are in women, and your bones are silent. You don't even know your hips are going to fail you. Look, Stacy, this is a hip bone. I know, this is where we fracture. This, you fall down, you fracture this. I've got to put some kind of metal in you. 50% of the time, you will not return to the house you raised your children. Pre-fall function. You can't do all the things. And the data show that when you're very elderly, 70 or 80, 30% of the time, you're going to die. So if me becoming kind of like a rampant lunatic about this all over the airwaves can save women, 1 in 2 women will have an osteoporotic fracture. Stacy, that's me or you. It's not like 1 in 20. It's me or you.
Yes. And I'm ahead of you. I was just going to say that there are stairs in my apartment. And when I found out about the osteoporosis, I really had like a little bit of a panic. It is a full-on staircase. It does not have a banister. It's like a weird cube, right? Like an Escher swam.
Very artsy.
It's very chic. I won't lie. But I really started to think, okay, you need sticky socks everywhere in the house. Not because I'm like, oh, okay, this is like, now I have to watch television with the subtitles on because I'm losing my hearing. This is, I don't want to fall, because one time a few years ago, I literally did a backflip from my stairs onto the floor. And I was so afraid to move. I was so afraid that I'd broken something. That was my bone density test then. Luckily, nothing broke, nothing fractured, but I was very lucky. And I will never try to put myself in a position like that again without taking steps that are easy, even slippers with treads, things that I know will make a difference.
Well, I'm so conscious of that too. I have a normal, uninteresting staircase, but I now never go down without holding on. I always carry big clothes baskets in one arm because I will not fall down. You know,
but see, I think that's the mindset. I will not fall down. Not, I'm afraid I'm going to fall. Because I think that is what, for me, when I first started to experience that kind of fear around the things that get dangerous and more scary as you age, I think I had a moment where I was like, oh, I have to pull back from everything, right? I've got to be really careful and really insular, which just actually makes your mindset so much older. So I love that it's, what am I doing? What is the action? And avoiding it is not going to help you.
Getting strong, building those muscles below your belly button so you stay upright.
Also, Dr. Wright, does frozen shoulder fall under your purview? And I don't quite know what it is. And 2, what do people do about it?
So frozen shoulder is so common in midlife women. In some cultures, it's called the 50-year-old woman problem. I know. So estrogen is a huge anti-inflammatory. And without it, our bodies are highly inflamed in a lot of ways, but the shoulder is especially susceptible to inflammation and can become painful and stiff rapidly. So you'll wake up with shoulder pain one day, you don't have any trauma, and you're like, I can handle this. But within 1 week, I have women coming in, they can't raise their arm, they can't hook their bra. And so I'm very aggressive with the technical word is adhesive capsulitis. We go to therapy. We do long, slow stretches. Sometimes, if we have to, we do anti-inflammation with steroid injection, because what we're trying to avoid is letting it go on and on and on. And the inside lining of the shoulder actually contracts. And then it can be a couple years to defrost. Imagine not being able to wash your hair for 2 years, right? So it's an inflammatory part of menopause.
And that's also fascinating to me that inflammation plays such a role here. I did not realize that estrogen was such an anti-inflammatory, which also makes sense with why I had more difficulty with my autoimmune diseases as I was in perimenopause. And I didn't understand why.
And many people, and this was one of my primary symptoms, was my whole body hurt. It's called arthralgia. And it's often mistaken, in my opinion, for fibromyalgia, just because most doctors don't even know it exists. And so your whole body hurts. You can barely get out of bed. And that's the inflammation that happens when estrogen goes away. So one of the primary decisions is hormone replacement therapy.
Dr. Wright, I can't thank you enough. This has been like such an unbelievably eye-opening interview, because I don't think people know enough about this, but all of the things that you listed are action items. Talking about recomposition, talking about action, talking about this, I'm worth it. These are all the things that I think that people who are really still quite confused, with the perimenopausal and postmenopausal experience, you've kind of really laid out a great map for us. And to talk about it with younger people is so important. And, this idea that younger people won't have to go through this kind of education.
Isn't that beautiful?
It will be baked into what they know about their health.
It'll be beautiful.
Yeah. It'll be beautiful. Well, partly because of you, Dr. Wright. So I want to thank you so much for your time. And I may call you more about jumping.
Please call me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Stacy.
Let's Talk Menopause is a national nonprofit organization invested in changing the conversation around menopause so women get the information they need and the healthcare they deserve. Please visit letstalkmenopause.org for a wealth of menopause information, including a symptoms checklist, information about long-term health risks, how to navigate menopause at work, and interviews with health experts, and so much more. Hello Menopause is a production from Let's Talk Menopause, produced in partnership with Studio Kairos. I'm your host, Stacey London. Kirsten Cluthe is our supervising producer, editing and mixing by Revoice Media. Hello Menopause is available on Spotify, Apple, Google, and wherever you get your podcasts.